today's world, there's just so many ways to document your life, whether it's a podcast or a blog. And so, however, whatever venue suits you best is the one that you should go with. And therefore, you're leaving behind a little legacy, whether it be big or small or whatever. But I think it's important. So,
welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. Discover yourself, break out of mediocrity, and become the mom you've always aspired to be. Here's your host, Kirsten Tyrell.
Hey, Marvelous Moms. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. So excited today to be bringing you this guest. I immediately loved her from my very first email from her. Her name is Chelsie Wood, and she is a blogger, a writer. She's got a beautiful book out right now, and we're going to chat all about it and her life as a mommy. So welcome to the podcast, Chelsie.
Thank you for having me.
It's exciting to have you. I know this is super nerdy, but when I looked through your blog and I looked through your book and then I saw the back cover, I told you this in my email, and it had the word marvelous, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, it's like clandestine. She has to be on my podcast because I just obviously love that word and I love any use of it.
Yeah, it was just fitting. So
Totally.
I like it just as much as you do.
Good. So tell everybody about your kids, how many kids you have, and what kind of a day in the life is like for you right now.
Okay, sounds good. So I have two little boys. I have Luca, and he is 3 years old. And then I have Harlow, who is 4 months old.
Love those names. So cute.
Thank you. And so a typical day for us, well, for me, I get up, right now my little one's 4 months old, so I'm up all night, but I get up around between 6 and 7, and I nurse him. And if I can afford to fall back to sleep, then I do. My husband we both tag team the kids. So my husband will get up with my 3-year-old, get him breakfast and ready, and I'll just manage taking care of the 4-month-old. And so I'll just nurse him until whenever, and then I usually try to go back to sleep, just because I'm somebody who functions way better if I have enough sleep, like most people.
I'm with you.
Then, seriously, if anybody wants to know the secret drug, it's sleep.
It seriously is. I totally agree.
Yeah. So I'll wake up around at the 8 o'clock at the latest, and then make breakfast, have a cup of coffee. I'm very slow to wake up in the morning, but so then I kind of set the pace for my day from there, depending on what we have in store. Like if I'm going to be writing blog posts that day, then I'll carve out time on my calendar to do that. I don't really have a good system in place right now. In fact, I really need to get some sort of calendar system down to where I have things scheduled ahead of time. I just kind of like to go with the day as it takes me.
Yeah.
And we just recently enrolled my little one, Luca, into a pre-K. And so that's going to be super helpful for me to know that, okay, 2 days a week, I'm going to be, have this time to myself and make sure I get as much done in those 5 to 6 hours as I can. And so, I wish I could say that my days were like super duper exciting, but right
They are. That's exciting. We all relate to that. That's mom life right there.
Seriously. Some days are crazy and some days are really fun. And we just, like I said, it's just wherever the day takes us at this point is where we go. So, Luca has to get out at least once a day. I'm the same way. I can't stay cooped up in the house, forever. So, we'll usually go to the park or try to do something that's active related because, I don't know if you have little boys, but
yep.
They have so much energy and it has to get out. So
yes, I understand that completely because I have 2 little boys and we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment for a while with them and their little sister. So there's 3 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment and it was ridiculous. If I didn't take them to the park, then our living room became the park. They jumped from couch to couch. They jumped off the beds. They were all over the place, sword fighting. So I feel you. And I am the same way too. I'm like, well, I totally relate to that because I have to get out at least once a day, even if it's like to go and get a soda or
Totally.
just to go walk Target for a minute. Like I have to get out of the house every day. And if I don't, by the next day, I'm just like, oh, I'm trapped. And motherhood is so hard and I never see the light of day.
That's exactly how it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's just good for you to get out, so
Yeah. Yeah.
clears your mind. And a lot of times that's where I gain most of my inspiration for any of my blog posts or, artwork or anything. It's always when I'm outside. It's never just, pops in my head,
Yeah, that's true.
unfortunately.
That's true. Yep. So tell everybody about your blog and maybe just even a little backstory on like becoming a mom and how the blog played into that. I mean, I know a lot of people start blogs because they want to document for personal reasons. Is that
Hmm.
kind of how it started for you?
Yeah, that's exactly how it started for me.
Cool.
Um, I lived in San Diego at the time, and I was living away from my family, and everybody was always contacting me when I got pregnant with my son, like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing? How do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a phone person per se. I like to text and I like to do Instagram and things like that, but I hate answering phone calls like 24 hours a day. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm just gonna put it all out there and then they can read it and I'll be like, here, send them the link.
Yep.
And I wanted to do it for myself in some ways because everybody says, oh, you should journal. And, I can't always find the time in my day to pull out a journal and physically write. And
Yeah.
then that takes up more space. So I was like, all right, this will be my virtual journal and we'll just do it that way. So that's kind of how it started. And I just loved it from the beginning, which was really cool. And that made it easy to keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it's just like my family really appreciated it. And now I have everything from the time I became pregnant with my first son to now, like all documented. It's
That's so
crazy.
cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I was religiously blogging years ago when I first had my, even before we had kids, before I met my husband, I think as I was like dating my husband, so this was like 9 years ago. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, if I'd kept going, do you know why I stopped blogging? This is so silly. And I think I've told one other person on here
Why?
because it was the blogger days and I ran out of room for more photos. And I was like, what do
Uh,
I do? I've capped out. I need to start a new blog. And that right there like derailed me. And I never started the new blog and I never
uh,
like blogged for family purposes again. I did try and do like a blog for each kid. Well, okay, I made it to like 1.5. I did for the whole first kid and then a little bit of the second one and none for the third. But oh my gosh, it's so important to do that. And it's so nice that we have it. Like set all the business aspect aside, just
yeah.
that I don't know, that genealogy, being able to chart your life and go back even yourself. Because I go back to my first blog and I'm like, I totally forgot about that. And that was only 7 years ago?
Yeah.
So it's so awesome to do that. And I'm so grateful that we have that tool. And it's so fun. Like, even if, he's a boy, I always used to wonder, like, is my boy even going to care about reading this blog that I wrote while I was pregnant with him? I was like, oh, who knows? Maybe his wife someday. But
No, I
even,
totally think I think it's super relevant. I think that what you're saying, if my mom's passed away now, but had she had a blog, I would have seriously devoured it by now.
yeah, yeah.
And it's a shame that like back then there wasn't those types of things. So, but I love it, and I think that yeah, I think boy, girl, grandchildren in today's world, there's just so many ways to document your life, whether it's a podcast or a blog. And so, however, whatever venue suits you best is the one that you should go with. And
Yep.
therefore, you're leaving behind a little legacy, whether it be big or small or whatever. But I think it's important. So,
Yeah, it totally is. So tell me how it evolved a little bit. Like, when did you kind of start doing it? Or maybe it still is evolving to something
yeah.
you're doing more as like a business or that you're taking a little more time for different reasons besides just personal reasons.
Yeah. So, okay. So, to be honest, the first year and a half probably of doing it, I had no idea that you could even run a business through a blog. I thought that it was just people were just, doing friendly giveaways and
Yep.
whatever. I was like, how do they even get people to like give them stuff to give away. And I mean, I was really, really naive to the whole scene. And
I think a lot of people still are actually. So,
I,
yep.
okay, maybe I'm not crazy because especially if
No.
you tell somebody, oh, what do you do for a living? And you say, oh, I'm blogging. They're like, what? Like, that's not true.
When you're in the world of it and all your friends are bloggers, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm really dumb that it took me forever to catch on to this. But if you're not, like, I explain to people on a daily basis how people are making money from blogs. And then their minds are blown and they're like, well, I should start a blog. And I'm like, okay, good job. But you won't make money for like a year.
Yeah, or you probably won't make money if you're starting it to make money, to be honest.
Yes, that's true.
Um,
Exactly.
I feel like any success story I've ever heard, it's always been, oh, I started it because I would have done it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then it somehow, the money came to them. I don't know.
Yep.
It's really funny how the world works that way, but
It's true, though. I mean, you're doing something to share with others and to do for a positive reason, and money's just the bonus. It's not, I mean, sure, you have to start businesses for money, but blogging's kind of, yeah, it's that weird little thing where it doesn't always intentionally come. And I think if you were to put that focus on it, it wouldn't. It would be so much harder. It'd
yeah,
be so forced. So,
totally.
yeah, whether
Yeah.
you're doing it just for fun or as a business, it's really important to be documenting those stories and starting to do something because your kids, you are not going to remember. I remember telling my mom, like, I would ask her questions, like growing up in my teenage years. Well, when were you? How old were you when this happened? Or how old were you when this happened? And she's like, I don't remember. I don't remember at all. I'm like, well, I'm going to remember. Because when
Yeah.
my daughter comes to ask me, I'm going to remember. She's like, okay, good luck with that. And I'm
Yeah.
already like, I don't even remember what happened in my first pregnancy, you know? So,
Right? It's so bad. Oh my gosh. I was thinking that the other day. My dad had asked me, oh, when do babies start crawling? Because I feel like Harlow's going to be crawling sooner. When did Lucas start crawling? And I seriously, I can't remember. I'd have to go back in my blog and like
exactly.
see a photo or something, but I can't remember. And I only have two, you know?
Yep.
It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
As soon as you get another one, they kind of like start the slate over again. Like, I don't remember what happened with the first one, but I will know now. Like, we're doing it again. It's just so
Yeah,
funny. It's so true.
totally.
So, okay, your book is absolutely beautiful. And I'm so impressed. Not only did you write it, but you illustrated it yourself as well. And the second I saw that, I was like, holy cow, everybody needs to have this. It's so vibrant. It's so beautiful. I'm going to post about it on Instagram so everybody can see it. But
You're
tell
so sweet.
me, I love the story too. Like before
Yeah,
you. So tell everybody about the book and
yeah.
how you came up with the idea, or I want to hear the inspiration behind it.
Okay, that sounds good. So like a little bit back to vlogging is, yeah, in answer to your earlier question, my career in blogging is totally still evolving, and I'm not near where I'd like to be or where, I feel like I have a good rhythm with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
still in some ways a hobby, but it's very much becoming one of my main businesses. And so aside from that, I knew that right now in 2016, the blogging world is really, I knew how saturated it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking to myself, what makes my blog stand out? And I couldn't really pinpoint a specific aspect. I mean, I knew that I had a specific writing style, and but I was thinking, I'm nervous, like if this becomes oversaturated, where like it's going to be so difficult. It's going to be just like the economy where there's like these really, really, really wealthy people at the very top, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's a ton of average people below them. And I think that I started to view the blogging world in that way. And
Yeah.
so I went to Alt Summit. Have you ever been
No,
to
but
Alt?
I've heard of it.
So I went to Alt Summit, and I've been a few times now, but it was my very first one, and I was there, and I was really inspired. And so I said to myself, I've always wanted to write a book. But I always envisioned that it would be a novel or,
Mm.
something like that. And I didn't know if it would be fiction or nonfiction, but I knew that I was going to write a book one day. I didn't know when. And so I was leaving there and I'm like, I think it's time. I think it's time that I write this book. I mean, I went to school for writing and then I've always been practicing it. And everybody has always told me that that's kind of my gift. And, sometimes it's funny how it takes you longer than others to really accept, oh,
Yep.
that is my gift. I
Yep.
didn't think of that. Like, I mean, yeah, I was good at it, but I was kind of putting it off because it wasn't a challenge. Because to me, it came so easily and so freely that
Yeah.
I can't just do something that I'm good at. Like, I got to do something that challenges me and this and that. And I mean, not to sound, pompous or anything like that, but I just was, that's always come so naturally to me. I feel like I always say it's my finest form of communication over talking, over anything. Um, so I knew I was going to write a book and I left the conference feeling really inspired. And I told my husband, I got to write a book. And so we were staying in an Airbnb at the time. And I started that night. I came home from the first night of the conference and laying in bed on my notes on my phone, I just started writing. Was thinking to myself, I'm going to write a poem for my son. It wasn't even about the novel. I just was thinking to myself, oh, this could be in the intro to the book or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So I was like, I want to write a poem for my son because he's the light of my life and all the things that we feel about our children.
Yeah.
And so I just sat there and I started to write this poem and it came super, super easily to me. And it was crazy. It was almost like I wasn't even writing it myself. It was just
Genius
coming out of
zone.
me. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
so crazy.
Yep.
And I mean, I was thinking to myself, how did that just flowed. It just flowed. And so I wrote it down and I literally finished it probably from the time the conference had started till we had landed home and it ended. I mean, granted, I did tweak a few things along the way, but I I didn't share it with anybody. I just thought, oh, I'm just going to keep this to myself. And then finally one day I was brave enough and I said, oh, I'm going to share it with my husband and see what he thinks about it. And he loved it. And he was like, oh, like that sounds like a book. It doesn't sound like a poem. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. He's like, you should write a children's book. And I'm like, like I can't write a children's book. Are you serious? Like I write for adults I'm not a trained artist and I can't illustrate and I started saying all the things I couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And which is very much in my nature. I feel like I don't give myself enough credit. And so I was
Nobody ever does, especially when you're a creative person.
is that right? You're always looking for some sort of reassurance or you finish something and it was amazing when you finished it and then all of a sudden it's not as good enough.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, let's make this into a book, I guess. And so I had started to try to envision in my mind what this would mean and I don't know how I'd get it published. And I shared it with a few other people too, because I didn't want to just feel like my husband was being biased towards me or feeling, like, oh, well, my husband said it was good. He had to tell me it was good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read it to a few more people and they loved it. And at the time, it was kind of narrated from a female perspective. And as a mother, and
Mm-hmm.
I personally, so of course it was. And I started to think, well, if this is going to be a book, it does need to be more universal because I would hate to exclude dads from being able to read this book to their children. And so then I had started to write this book. So I just took out construction paper and some pens and then I started thinking to myself, like, if I'm going to do this, I need to treat it like a business. It can't just be, for fun, because as much as I would love to just publish a book and have all this money to I just published a book. Like, unfortunately, like I don't have that luxury. And so I was thinking, well, if I'm going to try to sell this book and I want it to be out in the world for other people, I want to make sure that it's the best that I can give. So I invested in some good pens and I took a couple of online art classes and which really didn't teach me much because I feel like some people either have it or you don't. And I told my husband, I'm like, I really think I should just hire an illustrator. And he's like, it's a kid's book. Like, no one's going to know if the pictures are bad. And we have like the book, The Day the Crayons Quit. And he's like, there's like stick figures in that book. And that's on the New York Times bestseller list. So,
It's true.
like it's not so much the photos, it's the content of the book. And he's all, and stop cutting yourself short. Like, you can do it and whatever. So he's so sweet. And he's
Good
always been, for,
husband.
yes, I know. I feel like I always lean to him for, to really bring me to life. And he always makes me feel like my work is worthy, which is really, really good when you're in a position, in a creative position. And
Hmm.
so, and not even, and he's such a blunt person too. He's not, he's definitely given me my fair share of criticism, but in a positive way. And so I know when he says something, it's not, he's not lying to me. So,
Yeah.
that's been really important along the journey. But I started writing the book, and I did all the hand lettering first because that's what I wanted to do first. And then I set aside, I finally had to say, all right, this book will never be done if I don't put aside a specific amount of time. So I actually had to give myself a deadline. And I said, all right, it's going to be done, the Thursday before Thanksgiving. And then I divided up how many pages that would take per day. And my son was in preschool at the time, so I knew he was in preschool 3 days a week. So on those 3 days, I had to really consolidate my time. And I would go to this coffee shop down the road from my house, and I would try to sit there and just, put my computer down and just draw and write and get it all on paper.
So
And
cool.
so, yeah. And so it was a really interesting process because I have never had to give myself deadlines because, blogging is just, oh, like whenever I have an idea, I'm just going to post it. It's not a big project. And
Hmm.
so I figured there's so many, us as creatives too, we have a million ideas in our heads all the time. And so if you don't hyper focus on one idea, then you'll never finish it. I feel like I have a million half finished projects. And so I didn't want this to be another half finished project. I really wanted to finish it because I really felt like the message I had in the book was very universal to parents and it's even for people who have loved ones. It's not even limited to, reading it to your child. But so I set the deadline. I actually completed it 2 days before my deadline, which was really exciting. And then I said, all right, it's done. Like, what am I going to do now? What
What's next?
I don't know what to do. And so I was thinking, okay, it's on paper, but how am I going to get it into like how is it going to be bound and all these things? And so I started researching publishers, and it sounded like it was going to take forever to get published if I did find a publisher, and B, that so many people write books and so many people write children's books. I don't even know like how it's going to get picked up, or how will I distribute it? How am I going to find a publisher? I don't want it to be 5 years from now that I'm like, oh, I finally got it published and somebody finally believed in it as much as I did. And I was thinking to myself, well, I like love the book so much. Like, who better to sell it than myself? So I just started researching self-publishing, and then I came across an online publisher that I really enjoyed working with. And so I went with them, and I had to find a graphic designer too because you have to have it digitally laid out for it to be sent to the printer.
Hmm.
And I don't know a thing about graphic design. So I went on Upwork.com. It's kind of like Craigslist for freelance jobs.
Uh-huh.
And that was the best. Somebody told me, they go, there's some website and it's like Craigslist for jobs. You should go on there to try to find a graphic designer. So I just Googled Craigslist job finder or something like that. And that's what came up. So I found this graphic designer in Chicago, and we clicked, and he saw my vision, and I sent him all my work. And he had published a few different books before, so children's books specifically. So he knew exactly how it needed to be laid out, and the margins for the pages and all of these things that you don't think about. And he was really eye-opening for me. and he gave me a few ideas to throw in, and we worked really collaboratively and got the thing together, and I sent it to my publisher, or not my publisher, but my self-publisher, and I paid the money, and 6 weeks later there was a huge shipment of 500 books sitting on my driveway, and the UPS driver I'm like 8 months pregnant at the time, mind you, and the UPS driver is this elder man, and he's like, hey, I don't know how I'm gonna get these into your house, like I need your help. And I'm like, I don't think I can help you. Like, I'm super pregnant. I'm not supposed to be lifting. And so somehow this 80-year-old UPS driver, he was just the sweetest man, ends up forklifting these books into this huge pallet. It must have weighed like 1,000 pounds into my garage. And then I was like, okay, they're here. Like, I was so excited. I ripped open a box and I held it in my hand, and I was like, oh my God, it was the best feeling in the entire world.
I bet. Wow.
I mean, it was like, what? Like, this is crazy. It was so surreal to me. And I published it myself, which sounds so silly. You're like, okay, you did all the work. Like, you should expect.
No, that's not silly. But
But I
it's
was
different
loving.
when you like are holding it and it's there and you're like, this is only here because I did it. And that's like the
Exactly.
most accomplished feeling ever. It doesn't matter if you had a publisher. Like, who even uses publishers anymore?
Right?
Everybody
And
self-publishes, but you did it.
yeah, I did it. And it was just, I mean, I couldn't believe the feeling, how rewarding that was. And I knew how much I loved the the story. And
Mm-hmm.
so I I was, to be honest, like, it's been a really slow process, and it's been a huge learning curve for me because as a creative, like, some people are just, they have business, they have creative, they have all those aspects, and I am just solely creative. I have no clue about marketing, about anything of that nature. So my husband is actually a good counterpart to me because he's in the marketing world, and that's what he likes to do. And he's not as like artistically creative as me. He does skateboarding and other creative outlets, but so we make a good, team, because I just think of all the ideas, and then he's like, okay, but this is how we're going to execute them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a
And so
good
it's a
partnership.
good, right? So yeah, so it's in one little boutique store down here in San Diego, and I feel like that's just the start. I want to get it, I'm going to start doing a little more outside of San Diego County space, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's the start of it. And it's really just, it's my baby, and I've already written a follow-up book. It hasn't been, illustrated or like actually drawn out yet, but I have the text done. And so I feel like this really is my calling, and I don't know where this is going to lead me, or, where I'm going to be 5 years from now. I would have no idea how to tell you or anything, or what this could lead into, but I just, I love that I created this book, and I love that when I've given it to people, that in some small way that they're reading it to the people that they love most.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even, that's really the part that gets me, is just the fact that somehow my little words are making it into different people's lives and of different walks, and whoever they're reading that book to is sharing a piece of my story with the people they love the most, and that just is the most touching thing to me. So
I love
that's
it.
that. Yeah.
It's a good purpose to have, absolutely. And the book is beautiful. Like I said, I'm going to post about it because you actually have the whole text as well on the website if people kind of want to
Yeah.
see. And that's cool because that's how it began. It began as a poem turned story, and I just love it. I've read through it, and it's so sweet. And I mean, if you're a mom or a dad, really, like, you're going to relate to this. And it's just beautifully illustrated. I'm so surprised that you have no background in illustration because that was like my favorite part about the book, actually. I didn't even know the
Really?
words. Just looking at the illustrations, I'm like, oh, colors, vibrancy. I just love it. It's so well done. And even just the pictures you have illustrating the illustrations on the
Oh,
website are
yeah.
so well put together. So you're
Thank
super
you so
talented.
much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, you deserve every success with it, and I'm excited to see in 5 years or even in 1 year, what you've done with it, because I think you've got a really great mission ahead of you. And I think that you're doing all the right things. So keep it up.
Thank you. I will. And I'm just, yeah, I'm really humbled by the process. I think that like that's the key in today's world, for me at least, is storytelling is just so relatable. And that's where I've found the most connections. It's not been my prettiest post on Instagram. It's always been like the caption behind the photo. And so I feel like people just relate, and especially moms, like we're always looking for like I don't know, other moms that we can relate with, whether it's just commiserating about how tired you are or like how intense this is, or how I did not sign up for this, but or just romanticizing about how amazing it is and how wonderful it is. And I think that to create a product or something, anything that has to do with motherhood is just so I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it's just very like it means a lot to me to be a part of that. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I love being a mom. It's just been my greatest accomplishment and my greatest pride. And yeah, sometimes my husband's like, you talk about being a mom too much. And I'm like, I
No,
can't.
it's not even possible.
Yeah, right?
Hello,
He's
I'm
like, not
sitting here
everybody.
doing a podcast about motherhood. You can never talk about motherhood too much. It's like,
Well, that's why I loved when I came across your podcast. I was like, oh my God, I have to talk to her. And yeah, and I love listening week in and week out and just hearing other mom stories, because everybody's story is so different, and it's so just enriching and really awesome to hear that we're not alone and
yeah,
we're kind of all in this together. And it's a crazy conglomerate that like most people are moms. It's crazy. I mean, most women, I should say, and it just or on the road to becoming a mom. And so it's just this really beautiful art. I think
yeah.
there's art to it, and I don't know. When I had answered a few of your questions, I was thinking. I think the thing that wows me the most is that, as hard as it is, and how some days are just awful. And like, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like some days you feel like, oh my God, I don't think I could have given any more of myself. And nobody listened to me. And my kid had a meltdown at Target. And I was so embarrassed. All I wanted to do, I cried in the car for an hour or whatever.
Yep.
And then you put them in bed and you're like, now I feel guilty for even thinking those things. You see their precious little faces sleeping, and you're like, oh, like I'm so excited to do it again tomorrow, which is crazy. It's
I
such a
know.
oxymoron, and it's like insane. You're like, what? Like this is like, how can I love anything so much? And so really that's the inspiration that drives like a lot of my work and a lot of my about, I mean, anything in life. But I think once you have kids too, you have this newfound reliability. And so it's not like, oh, I could just like flail around and figure out whatever I'm good at and kind of, jump from job to job and really do that. You all of a sudden feel this really sudden urge of, oh my God, I have people to feed. I have people that rely 100% on me.
Yep.
And I think back to growing up, and I think of my parents, and I think of how well they were at making it look really easy. And I'm sure it wasn't always that way, but I, growing up, never really felt any type of pressure of, oh, I'm not going to be fed, or I'm not going to. I just thought they had everything in the world, and I thought they had it all together, and I thought that they were perfect people. It's so funny to think that in my head, but because you grow up and you realize, oh, my mom and dad are humans too.
Yep.
And but so for me, I feel like that pressure is so intense. I'm like, how do I make this look easy, or how do I make this look flawless, or how do I like in a way hide my struggle from my sons so they're not affected by it. But in a way, I think that It's important for our children to see our struggles, and it's important for them to see us overcome them, because I think that will inspire them to do the same for themselves in the future. And if they don't get to see us, like, hands on our hands and knees dirty, then, at least they can see that we put in the work and that
Yeah.
we did it for a good reason and all of those things. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good takeaway for our kids.
Right. I agree with you. So, since you kind of touched on it, we're going to wrap up with the final question, which I love to ask. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I mean, you just pretty much described it, and you've been describing it this entire time. But what makes you a marvelous mom?
It sounds really vain, but no, I was thinking about it, and I was, it actually came a lot easier to me than I thought it was going to. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? Every single day, I literally try to outmother myself. And I mean that in a healthy way. And I don't mean it like I'm trying to go over the top or anything like that. I just feel like every day is a learning experience to build upon. And tomorrow, I want to be a better mom than I was today.
Mm-hmm.
And I just smother my kids with affection and with love. And I don't think that you can do that enough. I
Yeah.
think that nobody's ever said that kid was too loved, Like, it's always like, oh, they didn't have love in their life growing up, or, like, that's the type of thing that comes up. And I think that when I am with my kids, I'm just like, I just smother them and I tell them like that they're the most handsome boys I've ever seen in my life. And I'm being truthful about it. That happened to me one time where I said something to my grandmother about, oh, my dad said that my book was the best book he's ever read. And he's just saying that because he's my dad. And she said, well, yeah, but to him, it's true, that's his truth. And I was kind of like taken aback by that. And I was thinking, well, yeah, like, I mean, when my son makes me something, and it might not be, Pablo Picasso, but to me it is. It's the most like wonderful, like anything that comes from them is just so rewarding and so beautiful to you. And it's just how the saying goes, like every parent thinks that their kid is the smartest kid and thinks that their child is the, fastest athlete and whatever. But they do, and it is true, and you can't discredit that. And so what makes me a marvelous mom is that every single day I really try to instill empathy, and I try to instill love onto my children. And so much so that they have too much that it has to spill out of them and touch others who maybe don't have enough. And so to me, that's really the cornerstone of my motherhood and of my mothering,
I
is
love
just,
it.
yeah, it's just really trying to make better humans to go out and make the world a better place. And that sounds really corny, but
Nope,
I
it doesn't. You're
that's
saying it in the right spot.
that's the goal, I really, if I have two boys who grow up to be loving, nurturing, and just caring, genuine, empathetic people, because I think empathy is just super important in today's world. I think it's important to try to really put yourself in other people's shoes, because it's easy to cut people down. And but if I can raise two sons to grow up and be the good in the world that we really need, then I'll be happy no matter what they're doing with their lives. So
Very well said. Well, it's been so fun to have you on here, Chelsea. I'm so excited
thank
for
you.
everybody to see your book, to get themselves a copy, because it's a must-have in your children's library. I really, 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 really feel that way. I think you're super talented, and I'm so grateful that you've been on here to share about the journey of writing a book and share about your journey of motherhood. And I hope it's inspired even maybe one mom who's been toying with the idea of doing something creative or turning something into a business, because, you know, that's the power of the podcast, like paying it forward and teaching somebody else and inspiring someone else to do something. And so thank you for coming on here and sharing that with everybody.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I think that you're doing an incredible job. And I love that you're highlighting motherhood, which seems so, mainstream, but really, I mean, everybody has a beautiful story. And so listening every week to a new mom's struggles and triumphs is just so rewarding. So I think that the work you're doing is just as beautiful.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet.
Oh, you're so kind. But it's been so much fun talking with you.
You too. And I hope you guys have all enjoyed listening. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks again, Chelsie.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
It's the holidays, and I want to make sure everybody is aware that there is a 12 days of giveaways going on over on Marvelous Moms Club. Head over to the Facebook page, the like page, and find out what today's giveaway is. There will be a new giveaway each day for the next 12 days. You might be the lucky winner. Just head over there and enter today's giveaway, and check back tomorrow to see what we're giving away next. Merry Christmas, Marvelous Moms!